Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, my co-host, Stephen Young of Roto-Grinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're previewing the Firekeepers Casino 400 at Michigan International Speedway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at Nashville, Ryan Blaney took home his first win of the 2025 season after passing Denny Hamlin for the lead in Stage 3. Hocevar also got by Hamlin to finish as the runner-up, while Hamlin came home in third after dominating much of the early and middle portions of the race. There was some, interesting battles for the lead. We had kind of a three-way battle for the lead with William Byron and Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney. And of course, Hocevar made his way through the field to get a strong finish there, career best of second place as well. So Stevie, what were your thoughts on Nashville?
I have good and bad thoughts. I feel like it's a lot more comfortable for fans to have a night race at Nashville in June because it's so incredibly hot. But I feel like the racing's going to be better during the daytime. Like, they were all so excited about bringing this left side tire that was supposed to generate more fall off, and there was like absolutely zero fall off.
Yeah.
And I want a little fall off. I want tires that are 50 laps older to matter a little bit, so congrats to Ryan Blaney. This is what we've been talking about all year. Like, after 20-25 laps, he was just like the class of the field, and this is just the most Ryan Blaney win ever because, we just saw a lot of green flag racing, which I do like. I like green flag racing, and he was the best car. Denny Hamlin, probably the second best car, and they finished inside the top 3. So when you're looking at the results, you're like, a lot of fast cars finish inside the top 10. Special shout out to my boy Eric Jones. He was my practice play of the week. After practice, I saw some data with him in practice that looked really good, and ended up really overweight on him. So it was just, you and I talk about practice all the time. Michigan was my highest correlated practice track last year, so I'm very excited for this weekend. But yeah, shout out to Blaney winning at Nashville. And I don't know what they'll do at Nashville next year, but I think it needs to be a daytime race if we're going to see more passing, see these tires fall off a little bit more. Just the night race, there just wasn't any fall off, and it's kind of to follow the leader. Even though, like, when you start looking at the finishing positions, like, there was a lot of place differential, but like the actual racing happened on pit road, and I hate that.
Yeah, I thought the first half of the race was really good, actually, and we got that battle for the lead that I mentioned. I think up to that point, I actually thought the racing was good, and that's because it was early, the earlier portion of the race, a little more heat in the track and in the ambient temperature as well, which allowed for a little bit better racing. But you're right, that last half of the race was so hard to pass, no fall off on the tires. We even saw it in practice. I was laughing at how little fall off there was even in practice, and practice was sort of similar to the early portion of the race in terms of the conditions. So definitely think we need to go back to more daytime racing at Nashville. Let's get it in the heat of the day so we can get some more tire fall off and some more battling, because I agree that second half of the race was pretty rough to watch, but I did think the first half of the race was pretty good. So You're right, practice, man. Eric Jones looked pretty good, both in flags and in your practice model. And then a lot of the guys that I identified, especially if you follow me in the Action Network app, I tracked like 5 or 6 head-to-heads on the day of the race, and I think almost all of them hit. I think all but one head-to-head hit, maybe all but 2, but very profitable head-to-head race because I was using flags, my model, and starting position, and when all 3 of those were in favor of the same driver, and the odds weren't too far off of the typical -110, -115s, I was betting those drivers, and they were just hitting like crazy. So definitely another good week for practice results, and like you said, I think we're going to have another good one here for Michigan. So this week, of course, we are at Michigan International Speedway. It is a 2-mile intermediate track, not a 1 mile, but a 2-mile intermediate track. Sorry, not even a 1.5 miles. So definitely the biggest intermediate track that we run at. We do have Indy and Pocono that are 2.5-mile tracks, but those are flat and don't really count as intermediate. So we just call them kind of like large flat tracks. So Michigan really does count as like your classic intermediate, but it's the biggest of the intermediates. It's got 18-degree banking in the turns. It's D-shaped oval. Even has 12-degree banking on the front stretch. So kind of these days, with no longer Auto Club, formerly Fontana or California Speedway being in existence, Michigan is kind of unique. So Stevie, talk about racing here at Michigan.
One of my favorite tracks with the next gen car. I like the fact that we run the intermediate package. We saw last year like 205, 208 miles an hour. Like you would see people get too wide last year, and then if you were the car behind that too wide, you were able to drive by both of them because of the wake that you were getting in the draft. So I think the racing with the next gen car has been really awesome at Michigan, and I expect it to be really good this weekend. So I think Michigan's another one of those tracks. We talk a lot about Kansas and Charlotte, where we just get really good racing with this car specifically. That I'm excited for this weekend. I think it's going to be a good race. It's a really interesting track, like you mentioned, because we don't have Auto Club anymore. In Auto Club, we had a ton of tire fall off because of how abrasive that racetrack was. But it still kind of gave us an idea because we always ran Auto Club early in the year, and we could be like, all right, who was fast in like the first 20 laps before the tires became like a huge issue? And we would be able to look at some stuff. But now we're going to be relying a little bit on like Charlotte and Kansas and like just high speed intermediate data. But yeah, I mean, I think the racing overall, I think we should all be excited about Michigan this weekend. It seems to be a really good track with this car, and we saw a ton of passing last year, which is what we want to see. We want to see cars that are able to move forward, go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Michigan, man, it is fast, like you said. Last year's fastest lap of the race was over 192 miles an hour in terms of, a race lap. So definitely some speed here at Michigan. And it's wide, it's fast, it's, horsepower is going to matter, aerodynamics are going to matter. This is going to be some really good racing. I think because it's so wide, it's not going to be necessarily like single grooved. You can make some passes in the corners. You can make some passes on the straightaways. You even can get a little bit of a draft down the straightaways simply because it's so big and so fast. Back in, when IndyCar or kart used to run here in those open wheel cars, the draft was absolutely monstrous in those cars. But even here in stock cars, you get a decent toe down the straightaways. So I think it's an interesting race, Stevie, and we don't even have these bets in our outline, but I think it's an interesting race to bet the fastest lap of the race because I think you could take some long shots given you get a point for that. There are some drivers on the bubble that could use any point they could get, right? And you can get that toe at Michigan. So, I was sprinkling a couple of long shot fastest lap bets over at DraftKings. Nothing official, just kind of some funsy bets. But I think my favorite was it's no longer 70-1, but I took Ryan Preece for a little sprinkle at 70-1 for the fastest lap. What do you think about that one? We got like a pre-bet, but he's moved to 40-1 now. I still don't hate that.
Yeah, I think the RFK cars are going to be good. I mean, Ford's going to be good. So, yeah, I expect a good weekend from Ford. So I have no issues with that. And like, he hasn't been qualifying the best this year. So like that's where you're probably going to see the fastest lap. You're going to see it come from a little bit middle of the field towards the back of the field, just getting a huge draft like down the front stretch and maybe even a big draft down the back stretch, passing a lot of cars and being able to hold the speed. I think that's where you're going to see your fastest lap potentially come from this weekend.
Yeah, I think you're going to see teams and drivers focus on it, like you said, in the middle or back half of the field, especially if they're on that playoff points bubble, whether it's a Ryan Preece, a Ricky Stenhouse, AJ Allmendinger, Michael McDowell, right? I mean, we've seen Michael McDowell already put up the fastest lap of the race 3 times this year. So that's something that team has been focusing on. So I think that's going to be an interesting one to keep track of at Michigan. But how else are we handicapping Michigan here? Any other comparable tracks or intangibles that we're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, recent speed I think matters a ton. That is just something pure speed. You've heard us talk about it already, but like pure speed matters so much when you go to Michigan because it's such a fast racetrack. We talk all the time. Practice is so important. But outside of that, I mean, you're going to look at the high speed intermediates that we've been to this year: Charlotte, Kansas, Vegas. I think you potentially put Texas in there, even though Texas isn't my favorite comp. I think Charlotte and Kansas are my two favorite comps, racetracks that have multiple grooves that you'll be able to see fast cars kind of pass at. So those are the two tracks I'm looking at. Vegas is getting a little bit more tire wear than it has in the past. So if I had to rank them, I'd probably put like Charlotte, Kansas, 1A, 1B, and then look at like Texas and Vegas as like a 3A, 3B kind of thing. And I think recent speed at Michigan and just overall recent speed this season is going to kind of rank really high. But I think, like I said, practice mattered so much at Michigan last year. We got a really good gauge of like who had raw speed, and raw speed turned into race speed last year. And I'm assuming it's going to do the same this year.
Yeah, honestly, practice has been, this is our 5th intermediate race in a row. And, you know, you mentioned Charlotte and Kansas. Well, those were the two where flags absolutely crushed the most from the practice flags. And you just ranked them 1A and 1B. I definitely rank Charlotte 1 and Kansas 2 of those. But those were the two races where flags absolutely predicted race speed. And I think we're going to see that here again at Michigan. So with that said, it is time to dive into our bets. As always, we'll drive through the race stage by stage, giving a pick each of us in stage 1 as our shorter odds bet, then another pick in stage 2 as we lengthen down the odds. Finally, we're going to race through stage 3 and end up in victory lane with our combined favorite bet. So time to throw the green flag on the Firekeepers Casino 400 and fire off for stage 1. First stage, Stevie, you are going to a top 10 driver that was very fast here last year.
Yeah, I'm going to Bubba Wallace top 10 plus 110. I think we are starting to see the momentum start to pick back up with 2311, and Bubba Wallace kind of went through a lull right there, and it was like, all right, where are we at? Because this team started the season great, and we were like, all right, Booty's gone. We're seeing great results here, and then it was just like, all right, what's going on? He said they basically just completely whiffed on the setup at Charlotte, which is a little concerning, but they came back with speed last weekend. If you look at Michigan, he was really fast here in 2022. He was really fast here in 2023. And he was one of, if not the fastest car last season before Kyle Larson got loose on a restart and ended up hitting Bubba. And that just killed his day. Like, he still had a little bit of speed, but it was nowhere near where he was at. There was a time during the race last year where Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin were battling, and Bubba Wallace just flew by both of them. So this car was really fast. I think getting this at plus money is just a really smart early week bet. And yeah, I'm on 2311. I'm on Ford, and I like this top 10 here for Bubba at plus 110.
Yeah, if you what I call healthy car adjusted, kind of like I do for flags, right? I'm not looking at when the car is damaged and running slower than it when it's not representative. Bubba Wallace, in terms of fastest laps, he had 14 last year, which was 5th most. But if you healthy car adjust that for the number of healthy car laps he ran, that was right up there with Martin Truex Jr. and Tyler Reddick in terms of percentage of healthy car laps running fastest laps. So I like this pick a lot. You know, Bubba Wallace 28-1 to win is still out there as well. Definitely don't mind that. So Bubba Wallace top 10 plus 110 is Stevie's stage 1 pick. For my stage 1 pick, this one's really interesting. I'm going to take Austin Cindric for a top 10 at 4-1. You can get it at Bet365, or you can get it even plus 350 at ESPN. And I'm a little baffled by it because, Stevie, I think where you are, Hard Rock is what you have. I think it's plus 260 there, and then anywhere else is like plus 190, plus 140. So his odds for top 10 are all over the place, but I'm way higher on Cindric than the 4-1 or the plus 350. And this is just a equipment thing, right? I mean, Austin Cindric is in top tier equipment. Team Penske, we know they're going to bring fast cars. Ford traditionally has run really well at Michigan, and Austin Cindric has come on this year in terms of some speed. He finished 6th at Las Vegas and was really fast there. 11th at Kansas, which are, again, two of probably the better comps for Michigan. Texas didn't quite get the result, but ran pretty well for a good chunk of that race. So 4-1 is just too long. Plus 350 is too long. I'd put it right around, that Hard Rock number at like plus 260 as to what I'd bet this down to. So just a spot here where we've seen a driver who has really improved over the course of his 3.5-year career now, and has gotten especially pretty solid at these intermediate tracks, making the most of his Team Penske equipment.
Yeah, I'm showing value on this at 4-1 as well. This is just one of those you're taking the equipment and you're saying, all right, Ford takes pride. We'll say it. Ford takes pride at running well at Michigan because of the track, because of the high speed stuff. They take pride at running good here. So I don't mind this one at all. Looking at his speeds this year on the high speed intermediates, he's right there. So yeah, I have no issues with this. They were just out to lunch at Charlotte. But they showed us last weekend that was just a one race thing. Maybe Penske just in general just kind of whiffed on Charlotte or all the stuff that was happening in Indy, whatever you want to believe. But they had speed again last weekend. They've had speed this year. If you take out Charlotte, he's like 12th in speed at Vegas, Texas, and Kansas, which puts him 4-1 is just incredible value at that point.
Yeah, the 600 is always interesting. It's just such a unique race just in general. You mentioned Bubba Wallace. They were out to lunch, a setup deal. And so we've got two drivers here in stage one that at arguably the best comp, which is Charlotte, weren't great. We're taking them for top 10 finishes, but they have been very good at the other intermediates. You remember Bubba was running really well at Texas before the crash that he kind of started. And then Kansas, he again, another DNF, and 2311 has struggled actually at Kansas in the past year and a half. After they'd been dominating Kansas for so long. So kind of a weird thing where 2311 got behind at Kansas, but I think Michigan's going to be a whole different beast. Toyota last year was just awesome in general, especially, the 2311 and the Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas. Plus another guy, Eric Jones, that you mentioned, has always been pretty good here at Michigan in that legacy. So Toyota should be strong. Ford should be strong. Hendrick Motorsports can be strong. It's going to be a fun race, Stevie. So stage one, Bubba Wallace top 10 for you, plus 110. And for me, Austin Cindric top 10, plus 400. So that'll be stage one. We're going to throw the green and white checkers on that. Come into the pits, fuel up, get some tires, get back out there for a restart for stage two. All right, another top 10 here in stage two for you, Stevie. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to the man himself, Brad Keselowski, top 10, plus 125. I like Keselowski's outright, too. I think you could potentially wait on it if you really want to, but I'm showing value on Brad Keselowski as a whole this weekend. This is a really good racetrack for him. It's always been a really good racetrack for him. We know Ford is going to come here with speed. He had a ton of speed here last year, just couldn't really, get there. He would run in that 5 to 8 range last year and just couldn't get to the lead. I think if he would have gotten into some clean air, he's so good at manipulating air, which is weird to say, but it is so true. Mm-hmm. But he finished 5th here last year, plenty of speed, going to Keselowski as a top 10, and Brad's had a ton of speed this year. He just doesn't necessarily have the finishes. But if you look at just raw speed, he's been great. And it's just, when is he going to put a whole race together? We saw him finally have a couple good races here recently, but if Brad can put a whole race together, I think he'll be in contention to win this race.
Absolutely. And some of it's been out of his control, right? He was running second at Kansas, about to pass Chase Elliott for the lead when his tire blew. And so, just some bad luck there. But finished 5th at Charlotte, and he said he wished that race was 700 miles because he was coming, right? He came from a lap down, came back, drove through the field, finished 5th at Charlotte, got us that top Ford that I gave out on the podcast here at plus 750 for the 600. So definitely has a lot of speed at the intermediate tracks. And Ford has always been great here. Again, another Ford driver at Michigan. And Brad Keselowski top 10 finish, I can get on board with that as well for sure. And his outright, as you mentioned. So Stevie's pick here in stage two, Brad Keselowski for a top 10 finish at plus 125. For my stage two pick, I'm going chalky. I'm going to take Kyle Larson for the win, 6-1 at FanDuel. Just before we recorded this, Circa had plus 650. It has since moved to 6-1 at Circa as well if you live in a state that has Circa Sportsbook. And I would expect that to potentially move by the time this podcast airs, either in one direction or the other. It just remains to be seen which way that moves. But I love 6-1 on Kyle Larson. Michigan is career-wise one of his best tracks. If we look in the first 4 wins of his career, it was Michigan, Auto Club, which is the other 2-mile track that now doesn't exist, back when it was lower tire wear in 2017. Michigan again, and then Michigan. I mean, he won 3 straight Michigan races from 2016 to 2017 with Chip Ganassi Racing, not Hendrick Motorsports, Chip Ganassi Racing. He hasn't found a win at Michigan in Hendrick equipment, but that's not without speed. He had the most laps led in 2021. He had the most laps led last year, finished 5th and 7th in the other 2 years that he didn't lead the most laps. So, I think this is a spot where 6-1 for a guy that won Kansas and absolutely dominated Kansas, right? And has won at Homestead this year, another intermediate track, not necessarily a great comp though because of the tire wear, but you get the idea. This is Kyle Larson won stage 2 at Texas, right? I mean, Kyle Larson met the most laps led, won stage 2 at Las Vegas. This is a driver that has just absolutely crushed this track type, and in the past has actually absolutely crushed this track. I have him at just shy of 15% to win, right? And at 6-1, you just need to be north of around 14.3%. So I have value on this. So I'm going to go with the favorite, Kyle Larson, 6-1.
Yeah, I mean, he ranked first in speed at Vegas, Texas, and Kansas. And then he was one of the fastest cars at Charlotte and got a little loose there and hit the wall. And we all know what happened at the 600 for Larson. It was just a rough day in general for him, but he had a ton of speed there. Obviously, we got the same left side tire that we had at Charlotte earlier this year. Same right side tire that we had at Daytona, which is the same at Michigan as last year. We know how fast he is at this racetrack, and you mentioned it. I mean, he has 3 wins here. The last time Chevy won here in 2017 was Kyle Larson. And he won 3 straight. So, yeah, I mean, this is a really good racetrack for him. We see with this next-gen car, if you can go up there and run the top line, especially at a track like this, it gives you a huge advantage, and he's not afraid to go up there and run that line. So I like Larson, too. He's been incredibly fast on the 1.5. So, yeah, this number was not available for me, so I couldn't tell you on this one.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely would only take this at 6-1. If it gets to plus 550, that's right borderline there with what my model has him at. So Kyle Larson 6-1 at FanDuel was my stage 2 pick. Stevie once again, Brad Keselowski top 10 plus 125. So that'll be the green and white checkers on stage 2. We're gonna drive all the way through stage 3. Take the checkered flag and end up in victory lane with our combined pick here in victory lane. And I love this one, Stevie. What do we got?
I'm excited about this one too. We over the years have found creative ways to get on stuff we both like, and we're both kind of on this whole group. So it's Roush Fenway Keselowski winning team at 10-1. And if you look at this, you're like, okay, that sounds interesting. Buescher won this race in 2023. He was extremely fast last year before he had all the issues happen. We talked already about how fast Brad was. And now we're throwing Ryan Preece into the mix, who's had a ton of speed this year. He just hasn't been able to qualify well. We've seen him race really well. And then we go to a track where Ford puts a lot of pressure on these teams to run really well, and a track that we know that Brad really wants to win here. He has said in the past, like, I've done most everything I wanted to do in my career, but I've yet to win at this racetrack. And this is a racetrack that he really wants to win at. One of the reasons that I'm on him this weekend. I like Buescher too. And then I think that if you're looking at our boy Ryan Preece, there's just a lot of speed out of all 3 of these cars. And I think we're just getting really good odds because of Hendrick and JGR.
Completely agree with you. I think we're getting really good odds on RFK Racing because, like you said, Hendrick, JGR /2311. But looking at this RFK team, if we just take last year and the year before, so 2 Michigan races, the most recent 2 ones, they've had 4 total starts, right? Chris Buescher twice, Brad Keselowski twice. This year they expanded to a 3-car team. They finished top 6 in all 4 of those starts. One of those was a win with Buescher in 2023. And then they've had a 4th, 5th, and a 6th, I believe it is, as the other finishes. The RFK cars were the fastest Ford cars in this race last year. If you look at fastest laps, the single fastest laps just of the Ford drivers last year, it goes Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, and then Justin Haley, which is interesting because Rick Ware Racing had that alliance with RFK. And then Chris Buescher, and then Chris Buescher, and then Chris Buescher, until we finally get to another non-RFK aligned Ford in Joey Logano. So RFK was just flying at Michigan last year. If we look at like fastest laps, Chris Buescher had 14 fastest laps, individual laps. Brad Keselowski had 7. Justin Haley had 5. Then we have to go down to, we get to Joey Logano, who had 1, and Ryan Blaney had 2. So even Justin Haley had more fastest laps than Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano combined, and Austin Cindric, if you want to throw him in there as well. All of Team Penske combined. So I really like RFK here. They've hit it at this track the last 2 years, and now they add in a third driver, Ryan Preece, and Ryan Preece has been pretty solid for Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing this year. If he didn't have that DQ at Talladega, he'd be well inside the points in terms of, feeling pretty good about his point spot. As it is, he's on the bubble here, but finished 3rd at Las Vegas, right, using a little bit of strategy there, but also had a good run at Kansas, good run at Charlotte. So it's just nice to get that extra third car when you're betting Roush 10-1 as the winning team. That's at Caesars, and there's a couple other sports books that have 9-1 as well that I like. So our victory lane pick, Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing as the winning team. And that's going to do it for us. Thanks for listening to the Firekeepers Casino 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. If you'd like to tail some of the bets we discussed today, look for the quick slip link in the podcast and video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. We'll be back next week to talk bets for the Viva Mexico 250 at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.